Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer deck tech, and today we're going to be talking about Izzet Faerie Temple. I am very excited to share this very spicy list with you. As always at the end of the video, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about this deck? Is there a specific fairy that we definitely should have put in this deck, or do you have suggestions for upcoming videos? Just let me know in the comment section. And before we hop into the video here, so a little bit of backstory with this deck. So I've been wanting to do fairies for quite some time, but I originally was going to wait because I know with Wilds of Eldraine, a whole bunch of new fairies came out, and obviously, you know, a lot of people are playing fairy decks, and I kind of wanted to wait a little bit until we got some more fairies just because, you know, we got a huge influx. I kind of figured as more standard sets come out, we kind of would get some more synergy, and then, you know, there'd be just a better fairy Pioneer deck in general. And we did get a new card from Foundations, which we've already talked about on the channel here, but I know it's something that a lot of people have been wondering. Can we build a fairy deck with this new card, which I'm sure most people know what this card is. But also huge shout out to Miku Sheep. We were talking in the comment section below on a recent video where, hey, could you do Izzet Faerie Tempo? And it kind of got me thinking, I think we definitely could do that. So the new card that I'm of course referring to is Kellen Planar Trailblazer. We featured it in a human deck a while ago, and it was pretty good in that deck. It's a 2-1 for 1 with some really nice abilities there. But once again, the cool thing is it is a fairy, which works really well with other fairy synergy spells like Spell Stutter, which is just, you know, I really love Spell Stutter. It's just like a mana leak essentially, but it can be better. So this was the inspiration behind the deck, playing Kellen, but there's a bunch of other really good fairies in this format as well, such as Faerie Miscreant, Faerie Mastermind, and Brazen Borrower. I really like Faerie Miscreant. It's just a really cheap fairy that allows us to draw some extra cards once we play some extra Faerie Miscreants. Faerie Mastermind is obviously a super good card. It sees a ton of play in Standard and sees a ton of play in formats like CEDH, and that's why it holds that $25 a piece price tag, because the card is definitely very good. And then Brazen Borrower has been fantastic for quite some time now. Pretty much since it was printed, it's been very good. Having that nice disperse effect is great, and then having the nice flash flying body is also pretty good. So those are the fairies that we're playing in this deck. But of course, we are a tempo deck. We want to play some cheap counter spells, some cheap removal, that kind of thing, just so, you know, we get our flyers in play, we just chip in some damage, disrupt our opponent, and then we're able to get the win there. So let's go and take a look at the rest of the cards that we're playing in this deck. We're also playing 2 Spell Pierce, 4 Lofty Denial, and 4 Chart, of course, as our other blue spells. So in combination with Spell Stutter, we have 10 counter spells in the deck. I've always liked Spell Pierce just because it's really cheap. It counters like Thoughtseize really early in the game, counters cheap removal spells that are going to take out our fairies. I've always been a big fan of it. Lofty Denial is just really good because we're playing a whole bunch of fairies. And yes, I know what you're thinking with Kellen, it'd only be a 4 spike for 2, but you know, if it's on turn 2, a 4 spike most of the time is going to be good enough, but then late game we have a Brazen Borrower in play, or have a Faerie Miscreant, and then Lofty Denial is just counter spell, which is good. In the Chart, of course, we want to draw some cards, and that's why we're playing 4 copies of Chart, of course, because the card is definitely very good. And on the next slide here, we have a whole bunch of removal that we're playing. We're playing 4 Torch the Tower, and 4 Burst Lightning is our main removal spells. I'm also playing 2 Izzet Charm. It also kind of works because it's a burn spell, but it's also a counter spell, and then it kind of help us draw a little bit. So I really just love Izzet Charm. The card is just really cool. I was playing I'm forgetting the name of it all of a sudden. Instead of Burst Lightning, it wasn't Play with Fire. What's the other one that people like to play? Oh, Fiery Impulse. I was playing that, but I decided to play Burst Lightning just because it does go for the face, and there were some games where you just want to throw it at your opponent, and then the kicker is also really nice as well. Sometimes there's like these weird situations where a kicked Burst Lightning is exactly what you need to be able to close out the game with all of our cheap flyers, so that's why we're playing the 4 copies of Burst Lightning there. So overall, I really love the removal suite in this deck. But you want to know what? That's the entire main board. Let's go and hop into the lands real quick here. It's really simple. 4 Spirebluff Canal, 4 Steam Vents, and 2 Shivan Reefs as our main dual lands. We are also playing 4 Riverglide Pathway, 1 Otawara, and 1 Sakenzen. And then rounding out our lands, we were playing 2 Restless Spires, 1 Island, and 1 Mountain. I wanted a cheap man land, and unfortunately, until Faerie Conclave maybe hopefully enters the format someday, Restless Spire will have to do, but I do like this card regardless. And as our spicy basic lands of the day, I try to find some fairy themed basics. So the island I know is one of like Magic's most popular art pieces. A lot of people really love this island, and I don't blame them. There's a reason why it's $1.50 a piece for this land. It's really cool. Obviously, nowhere near necessary for this deck, but if you want to have like a fairy deck and you want to play a very flavorful island, this is definitely one of the best ones that you can play. And then I really like the mountain as well from Throne of Eldraine. You know, obviously you got like the fairies or the pixies or something going on there on the mountain, which most fairies really don't like. They're not depicted in mountains very often. They're typically on just islands and swamps, so it's kind of hard to find a mountain, but I really do like this art piece nonetheless. So don't go anywhere yet though. We still have to talk about our sideboard as well as some budget options for the deck. So sideboarding is going to be relatively straightforward. We're obviously going to have some counter spells in the sideboard. Negate and Mystical Dispute are both fantastic options. Negate is just clean. It takes care of so many different cards. Mystical Dispute obviously is good against all the other blue decks because the blue decks are going to be bringing in their Mystical Disputes, so obviously we got to bring in our Mystical Disputes. I also really love Damping Sphere and Unlicensed Hearse in the sideboard. With Damping Sphere, Lotus combo is more popular than ever in paper and on Arena, so you're definitely going to want to pack a few copies of Damping Sphere. And Unlicensed Hearse is just a really good graveyard hate artifact, really nothing more than that. Flame Sweep. I love Flame Sweep in this sideboard just because it deals 2 damage to each creature, except creatures we control with flying, so we're able to wreck the board a little bit. Like if our opponent's playing this really go-wide deck, we can just Flame Sweep, all of our flyers will survive, and then all their creatures will just take 2 damage, which, again, in the matchups we want to bring it in, is just going to take out their entire board. So, huge fan of Flame Sweep. And then I'm also playing a few copies of Obliterating Bolt and Abrade in the sideboard as some extra removal. Obliterating Bolt is great right now just because there's so many creatures where having that exile effect is extremely relevant, so that's why I really like Obliterating Bolt. And then Abrade is just clean. It's 2 mana, 3 damage, or destroy an artifact, and you never know in this format when you're going to have to destroy an artifact. It always seems like every time you don't pack Artifact Hate, you're always going to run into an artifact deck or something like that. So I always love packing a few copies of Abrade. And then the last thing we have to talk about here, which is, I would say, the most important part of the video, is the budget options. You know, if you don't want to spend $243, which is how much this list costs, what can we do to trim that cost a little bit? Obviously, play some budget dual lands. You don't have to get the Steam Vents and such. You can go ahead and take those out, along with like Otawara, for instance. Play some budget dual lands. Get some Shivan Reefs. Get some more Shivan Reefs. You can play Sulphur Falls. That's also a really good budget option. I would say arguably the best budget option. You can also swap Faerie Mastermind. Faerie Mastermind is an incredible card in this deck, but if you don't want to spend $25 US a piece for Faerie Masterminds, I think in the budget list I did Picklock Pranksters, which is a fantastic option. Picklock Pranksters is really good, so feel free to go ahead and make that swap. And also feels good just because, yeah, again, Picklock is already really good in general. So the current list as it's constructed right now is $243 US, and I was able to get the budget list down to only $50. And all I did was trim the dual lands, and then I swapped out the Faerie Masterminds. I want to say the sideboard stayed exactly the same. I don't think I changed a single card in that. But overall, this deck was really fun to make. I've been wanting to feature a fairy deck for a long time on the channel, and Kellen definitely, you know, was the inspiration in terms of wanting to make Izzet fairies, and there's a ton of really good fairies that I did not include in this deck, like Sprite Dragon, for instance. So if there's some fairies that you think I definitely should have put in this deck, just let me know in the comment section below, or if you actually have a fairy deck yourself that you like to play, whether that's in Standard or Pioneer or Modern, go ahead and share that list below, and I will definitely take a look at it. So that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. The deck lists are in the description below if you'd like to check them out for yourself. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, Sarwanoki, and Night Red 3. If you were interested in being a channel member, it's only $1 US a month, and you get access to the exclusive Commander Crane Discord, as well as other features here on the channel. And we are on our way to 1,000 subscribers, so if you don't want to miss that giveaway, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, so that way, as soon as we hit 1,000 subscribers, you can be notified of that and be entered into the drawing. So, I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.